Perfect. Okay, so this is the Student's Choice Review Essay for English 101. The schedule, since it's the end of the term and we can skip the rough draft on one essay, I know you're going to be busy at the end of the term, so we're not doing a rough draft for this paper. The introduction and outlines due in Canvas on the 26th of April, and then the final draft is due a couple days before we meet for our final. The primary idea here is that maybe I can get them graded, at least the ones that were turned in on time before the final, so you'll have a good idea of what your grade's going to be. Do keep in mind that about 50% of our grade is turned in the last week of the term. Okay, so with the last day to withdraw being, I think it's the 26th. I have to look it up. But at any rate, I would really discourage anybody, who has a passing grade going into that to not do the final and do the last paper because, we have 30% of our grade from the two parts of the final. This is 10% of your grade. So, and I still haven't done I don't do the participation grades until the end of the term. So we do have a lot of stuff that we can turn in at the end. Okay, so let's take a look at the assignment. One thing that we should always do, whether we are reading literature, nonfiction, or watching a film, is read the material with a critical eye. For this assignment, what I want you to do is write a 1,000 to 1,350 word review that discusses what does and does not work for you in a story, movie, or play. Your choices for that I will get to in a minute, but basically you're going to be writing a review like you would a film review for a newspaper. Our guidelines are slightly different, but in essence that's what we're doing. By the end of the essay, you should have a strong explanation of whether or not the reader should read the story, watch the film, watch the play, based on your opinion of it. I expect you to incorporate some or all of the writing techniques that you've read about in this final unit. So the multiple strategies, some of the sample essays that we're examining, and so on. Okay, for this essay, you will choose a story on the list provided below. I'll go over the list of approved works here in a second. But let's just go over the process for writing this paper. This is what your paper should include. When you're writing a review, it should include the following. In your introduction, you should include some basic facts about the story, play, movie, including the title, the author, the genre. Genre is just a French word for category. Horror is a genre of film. Drama is a genre of film. Comedy is a genre of film, although there's not too many comedies on the list. You should also say something about your opinion, the story, along with your reasons for liking or disliking it. This is only the second semester I've done this essay, so I don't have a sample essay yet, but I will before it's due. Okay. The subject plus significance of your thesis should be your story, movie, play, and your opinion of it. In other words, say you were doing Scooby-Doo. You should go watch the Scooby-Doo movie for these reasons. That's your subject plus significance. And I would never recommend that anybody watch the Scooby-Doo. It's terrible. Anyway. Summary. Now, this is important. The entire essay is not a book report, but I do want you to summarize the work because although I've seen a lot of the films, read a lot of the books that are on the list, I haven't gotten to all of them. Okay, so in 7 to 9 sentences, summarize your work. If it goes over 9 sentences, I will cross out the sentences of the summary. Okay, so the summary is just supposed to be a brief paragraph right after your introduction that summarizes the main idea of your work. Okay, so relatively brief, but you can do a lot in 7 to 9 sentences. Discuss the setting, the main characters, and the main events or problems that the characters experience. As I mentioned, I will cross out any sentence in the summary after the 9th sentence. Okay, questions on the introduction or summary? Those are the first two paragraphs of the essay. All right, personal reflection. Discuss what you like or dislike about the story, movie, play. Give reasons to support your opinion using good evidence from just the work. Sources, if you choose. You can choose to make this a research paper. Unlike the career essay and the arguing essay, which research is required, this essay, if you want to, you can incorporate research. But the approved research material policy still applies. Okay? But trying to give your grade that little boost at the end, chances are using source material and citing it correctly is going to give your paper a bit of a boost. Everybody's going to have a works cited page whether you use research or not. I'll get to that in a minute. And detail, which will be the building on the skills you incorporate into the review essay. You may want to compare and contrast the story with other stories you've read by the same author or in the same genre. So say it's a movie by Jordan Peele that you're examining. You might want to compare it to something else that he's done. The Key and Peele Show, or other works by that author. Now we've switched because some of the movies that are eligible are Academy Award winners from this year. So last year, Jordan Peele had a movie, I'm blanking on the name of it, Get Out, that was very well reviewed. It was nominated for awards and things like that. That's a movie you could have used in the past. I don't think he has anything up that was up for the 2019 Oscars. I'm getting ahead of myself. After you do a personal reflection, what you liked and disliked, and be honest here. If you picked a work or a movie and it turned out to be not what you expected and you didn't like it, you can talk about that. It doesn't have to be sugar plums and flowers in the essay. It doesn't have to all be happy stuff in this essay. Give an honest opinion of it. And if that honest opinion is that you didn't like it, as long as you say why you didn't like it, that's okay. Okay, critical analysis, and this may be more than one paragraph, okay? 5-paragraph essay is a guide, but it's not a limit. You can always go above 5 paragraphs if you have more to say. Critical analysis is in the critical analysis, some of the questions to explore are below. Notice that some is in bold, okay? This is not a checklist, okay? This is to help you generate ideas for this paper. In addition, there's not enough space in the paper to answer all these questions thoroughly. So this is just kind of something for you to look at, especially with the movies, before you watch the film, so you know what you should be looking for. Okay? So some of the questions you may ask yourself, what's the author's purpose in writing this story? What's the director or producer's purpose in making this film? Is the author successful in achieving this purpose? What's the setting? Sometimes setting is very important. If you have a dystopian science fiction movie like, say, Elysium, Planet of the Apes, to a lesser extent, the setting is important. It's critical. Even if you want to go back a little ways to, say, Episode 3 in the Star Wars trilogy, they have to be on a lava planet to burn Anakin Skywalker. The setting is critical to certain parts of movies. How well are the characters developed? Do they think, feel, and speak and act in a believable way? We've all seen, or at least heard the cliche of the horror movie that, the people just act dumb. Hey, let's go see what's inside this haunted house. Let's go see what that weird noise was. Or people just act in ways in which they would never act in real life, or most of the time. Natural selection is not completely eliminated in human beings. How well is the plot structured? What is the theme or central idea of the story or movie or play? Does it have a twist or unexpected ending? If you're watching an M. Night Shyamalan movie, you know what that is. The Sixth Sense is his best example of that. But most of his movies have some sort of surprise ending. Does the author use any literary devices such as metaphor, simile, alliteration? You're going to get into that more in English 102, but some of the basic things, most of us have heard of such a thing as a metaphor or a simile. Ideas that are going to be presented in more artistic films, literary fiction, are going to be using things like this. All right, questions before I get to the conclusion. Okay, so the conclusion, you should evaluate the story and either recommend it or not recommend it to readers. So basically, we're doing similar things that we've done in other conclusions where we're wrapping up the story. Or excuse me, not the story, but wrapping up the essay about a story of some sort. But what I'm looking for specifically in this conclusion is whether or not you're presenting a recommendation to the reader, whether they should go check out this story that you read, this movie that you watch, this play that you've seen. Okay, so as long as you're making that effort, your score's going to be pretty good on the conclusion. All right, so in grading this paper, I'll be looking for depth of ideas and analysis, use of supporting evidence, and overall strength and clarity of the writing itself. But please do note that this is not a plot summary of the story or movie or play. Okay, there's a spot for summary in here, but then after that, you're going to be discussing the film. So it's two different perspectives. Think of it this way. When you're summarizing the work, it's like if you went to a movie and you're texting with a friend later, and they ask you how the movie was or what was it about. That person hasn't seen the film. So that's what you're doing with a summary, right? In the 7 to 9 sentences, telling them what happens. What you're doing in the rest of the paper is treat it like somebody you went to go see the movie with, where you're still talking about things that happened in the film, but you both have that kind of shared knowledge, because after you've shared that knowledge with your readers in those 7 to 9 sentences summarizing the work, reader knows the basics of the work. Now you can analyze things that happened in the film. And don't worry about spoilers and things like that. It's not a big problem if you're revealing major plot points. I'd rather have you do a good analysis and me know what happens in a movie I haven't seen than not do good analysis for the sake of spoilers. Okay, optional research. If you choose, you may use research in this paper. However, it's not required. If you choose to use research, you must still follow the approved research material policy in the syllabus, and you're limited to 3 sources. So everyone will have a works cited page, because even if you use a film, you still need to cite the film. And you can Google or go to the OWL Purdue to look up how to do a works cited citation for a film. Okay, so at most you're going to have 4 entries on your works cited page. The primary work, the film, the story, play, and 3 secondary sources. Works cited, regardless of whether or not you choose to use secondary sources in this paper, you must have a works cited page that at least has the primary source. Now, I'm not saying you can't write an A paper without research, but the research will kind of help, okay? I've kind of left the options on this paper purposely open to students. It's the end of the semester, we're tired, we're worn out. I'm trying to at least give you the freedom to write about something you want to, even if it's still a lot of work. All right, so formatting, standard formatting, you need to have a good title, have a thesis that answers the so what question, explains your opinion and analysis of the story, movie, play, free of grammatical and mechanical errors, clearly and logically organized, at least 1,000 words. And if you want to go over 1,350 words, that's fine. In a language appropriate to an academic essay, it needs to be double-spaced and in Times New Roman 12-point font. Follow MLA guidelines for formatting and submit it by the due date. In the case of this class, it's the 29th, but make sure you're checking your due dates. Okay, so this is the list of works, and this is the part where I did find the first time I did it, people didn't pay enough attention and they got themselves into trouble. Okay, the last thing you want is to turn in your intro and outline on the 26th and then get an email from me on the 27th saying you've picked a work that you can't use on this paper. Okay, so here's a list of works. If you want to read a short story, you can select a story. You only have to use one story from any of these collections, and they're Pulitzer Prize winning collections. Interpreter of the Maladies, Olive Kitteridge, The Complete Stories by Catherine Porter, Tales of the South Pacific, Collected Stories of Gene Stanford, Elbow Room, Stories of John Cheever, and A Good Scent from a Strange Mountain. These are Americans who won the Pulitzer Prize in fiction for a short story collection, which is fairly rare. Usually it's for a novel, okay? But you only have to select one short story from one of these collections. If you'd rather, you can pick a short story under 30,000 words from one of the American or Canadian Nobel laureates. That means that they won the Nobel Prize for Literature. William Faulkner, Ernest Hemingway, Toni Morrison, who's still working at Princeton, I believe. Alice Munro, who's a really interesting writer because she's one of the few writers out there that has made a good living primarily writing short stories. She has written a couple of novels, but those aren't her big breadwinners. So good for her. Sinclair Lewis, Saul Bellow, who was born in Canada but had dual citizenship, or John Steinbeck. Okay, so you can pick short stories from any of the 8 collections above for Pulitzer winners, or any short story by Faulkner, Hemingway, Morrison, etc. Okay, so that's short stories. If you'd rather watch a film, you can review a film from a nominee or winner from any of the current year's Academy Awards. So that's the ones that happen in March of 2019. Okay, so for movies that came out in 2018. But you can only pick a film from one of the following categories. Best Picture. There's up to 10 nominees for that. The rest of them have up to 5 nominees. Best Director, Best Actress in a Leading Role, Best Actor in a Leading Role. Including the actors and actresses really increases the number of films, because sometimes somebody gets nominated for Best Actor or Actress in a film that wasn't necessarily that great overall, but their performance is really good. Best Actress in a Supporting Role, Best Actor or Actress in a Supporting Role. Sorry about the typo there. So, these are the only categories. These 6 categories are the ones that you can use from the Academy Awards that happened in March of 2019. Okay, go to Oscars.org to see what the nominees are. That's Oscars, like the hot dog, Oscars.org. Okay. The reason I'm emphasizing this so much is in the past, when I did this essay, people interpreted Best Picture as they could use Best Picture for Best Film, Best Animated Film, which you cannot use. Okay. I got a bunch of papers or intros and outlines on Coco, and I'm like, no, you can't use that. So stick to these categories, please. Now, if you want to watch a play production, these are all film versions of these. You must use the version listed. If you want to see a play production of Hamlet, this is by the Royal Shakespeare Company. It stars David Tennant and Patrick Stewart. It takes place in modern times. It's still Hamlet's language, but a very good production of it overall. David Tennant, if you don't know who he is, he was in the 4th Harry Potter film. He also was one of the Doctor Who's. Very well-known and respected British actor. If you don't know who Patrick Stewart is, move out from under the rock that you've been living in. Or living under, I should say. Driving Miss Daisy. This is actually a film adaptation of a stage play. Starring Morgan Freeman and the late Jessica Tandy. Both of them were nominated for Academy Awards. Jessica Tandy won. I don't remember if Morgan Freeman did. It is. It's a lot of fun. Casablanca, which actually was an adaptation of a play that was never produced. But it was one of the most famous films in early American cinema. It actually, even though it came out in 1942, it takes place in that short period of time between the start of World War II in the Pacific and in Europe, but before America was involved in either theater. The Crucible, starring Daniel Day-Lewis, he did win Best Actor for that. And Googly Eyes herself, Winona Ryder. The play is by Arthur Miller, who was one of Marilyn Monroe's husbands. At any rate, it's about, well, the play is literally about the Salem witch trials, but it was written at a time when they were doing figurative witch hunts for communists in the 50s. And that's really what it's referring to. So if you do The Crucible, it's a good movie and it's a good play, but you probably want to research it a little bit so you know the context. Macbeth, starring Michael Fassbender and Marion Cotillard, is how you pronounce that. Another Shakespearean play. All right, so any questions about the works that we're allowed to use? You got a lot of choices here. The David Tennant Hamlet, if you don't want to rent it or buy it somewhere else, I do have a copy in my office that I will check out to you. But if you think the library is bad with fees, if you hog this movie, I will get on you. The other ones should be available in our library, okay? And you can find it in a digital format somewhere else. And the ones that are nominated for Oscars, most of these should be available in places like Redbox. Okay? Any questions about the essay assignment? It's worth 100 points, but I'm using the standard rubric that I've used. This is your last chance to earn those points for your final grade. Okay, let me go ahead and shut off the video.